Welcome to the American Made and Paid Show, the home of free speech and independent thought.
The big story is freedom of speech is really in trouble. The far left knows that at any time they can call for a sponsor boycott of anyone they despise.
It is right here, right now, where you'll get your weekly dose of unfiltered truth.
It's non-negotiable. Pre-existing conditions will be protected. This president has said this as a candidate.
Insight.
Very few people I know could have handled it. We can never, ever let this happen to another president again.
And information that challenges the American way of life.
Welcome, everybody, to the American Made and Paid Show. Hope you guys are all doing well. Zach here, back with my co-host, Professor Dreg. And I don't know if any of you have been following the news lately, but it looks like we're going to have to revisit this topic and talk a little bit about environmentalism, climate change, and all of that. I think previously on this show, what we've talked about in thorough detail are things like solar, right? Funnily enough, Pelosi invested in it until people found out that it was a bit of a bust. And we've talked about how governments are given huge subsidies to folks to create solar, even though, you know, it's actually a lot more expensive to actually get it manufactured and installed. And it costs you more to do that, right? But it's the same jargon, you know, AOC talking about how climate change is a greater threat than war. You know, if you don't support climate change, you're this, you're that. It almost feels like I've given up when it comes to talking like some of this. And then recently, there's a lot of these recent environmental groups who have been protesting it.
Hold on, you are.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Wait. Yeah, that's for some reason. It's going in. Yeah. Okay. So it's down to yellow. So cool. I can hear you.
Okay. Well, what I was saying was, what are your thoughts? A lot of folks that are protesting environmentalism, they're called these climate alarmists, right? They're obstructing traffic and whatnot. And I feel like I think that we need to actually talk a little bit more about this and remind everybody that carbon dioxide actually makes the world colder, not warmer. I just have to say that again.
Yeah, well, we spoke about that, and because my goodness. So CO2, when it's a solid? What's another word for CO2 when it's
dry ice?
Exactly.
That's all I needed to know. And that's all people need to know. That debunks everything.
And this is, I mean, when I just think about everything. So whenever I think about this environmental movement and everything else, only one word comes to mind.
Yeah.
That is Solyndra. I don't know if you remember Solyndra or not.
We talked about it on previous episodes, but let's give it a rundown and let's talk a little bit more about clean energy and all this for folks who are listening to the show for the first time or they don't know much about it. So
yeah, well, see, because I don't know specifically what's in the news, but solar energy, and we spoke about this and why it is not quote unquote a clean energy. You know, it'll never be clean. Mm-hmm. And it's not that it's dirty for like, okay, one, it's CO2 is, I know, CO2 is, it's a myth that it's bad for us, you know, and because look, what is CO2? Basically, CO2 is our waste. We breathe it out, and guess who eats it up?
Yeah, plants. We talked about that. Yeah,
the trees. So we got to remember this. It's like, we've said this before, but the reason why we have to get real basic with it is because everybody is basic. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point. The reason why all of this is happening is because everybody's basic. They have a basic education. They have a basic, you know, I don't want to say IQ, but just everything is basic. Everybody's spoon-fed. So if we just get into the basics of science, you know, and that's what we have to do. So that's why I said it, because realistically, we have to really understand the basics. So for people who are listening and I'm hoping people are listening that do not agree with us, because I'm pretty sure the regular listeners are not basic. But for those that are basic and really don't understand CO2, then it's really bad. But now let's break down solar. And it's actually funny because a friend of mine, his nephew, has a really cool patent that actually split some of the energy and the radiation that could actually make solar feasible.
Yeah.
But let's not get into that. Let's just talk about Solyndra. So basically, Solyndra, like many solar energy companies, they are nothing more than big, destructive, environmental, quote unquote, polluters.
Mm-hmm.
And why do I say that? Because solar fields, which create solar energy, like the ones you see in Arizona, Nevada, I'm pretty sure they got them all over Australia. But all of those places, you go study the land in Australia. I guarantee you, when the research is done, they will see that those solar fields wiped out whatever vegetation was there. It killed the wildlife that was there.
Mm-hmm.
The rainfall has decreased by at least 20% in Australia. I guarantee you that. Let them do the research. Well, obviously we don't live in Australia.
And well, we also let's also, because what I want to get into is I want to explain this to people who are gonna, regardless of what you say that, well, you're not a scientist. What would you know about climate change? But like what we do on this show is not necessarily to, educate people on the news or whatnot, but to get people to listen or to think a little bit more critically about certain things, right? Ideally, like just think, like the reason why I bring up the carbon dioxide example constantly is because carbon dioxide in a solid form is dry ice, and even if it's in a vapor form, I mean, does that necessarily make the atmosphere warmer?
Shit, you froze.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, my internet connection's a little bit weird. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, that's better. No, you froze for a bit, but you're back.
Yeah, what I was saying was I always tell people one thing, because we could go into the science and everything. They're like, well, some studies say this, some say that. And I don't even want to go off of that. You know why? Because it's in an effort to confuse people even further. The solution here for all of this is to just not waste as much. That's a big thing. It's really ironic that when California bans plastic straws, you find more trash in that city than in cities that don't ban plastic bags. So it's really, really ironic.
Well,
what I want to get people to understand is to just think about it from a simple concept. Carbon dioxide, does that really make the atmosphere warmer? Or is it as a result of other things? Now, pollution, if you're talking about pollution, I'm not for pollution, but they're not.
Yeah, but CO2 is not pollution. That's thing.
What I'm saying.
Yeah,
People
there you
mix
go.
it in and think they're all the same thing, and it leads to more heat. It doesn't.
No, but even if it did, let's say it leads to heat. Let's say, because it's technically true. When the CO2 starts to melt, it's because the temperature's rising. Although, like, I forget the exact number, but CO2 in its solid form, for it to melt, it has to be like a negative 100 something. You know what I mean?
Right. And that would mean it'd have to be very, very cold, because I would like to think that
dude, nobody can survive at that level. What plant can live? I mean, not plant, but what human or mammal can live in 100 and negative hundreds?
Right.
None. So, but I mean, well, there's, parasites that probably could. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Because the whole thing about being a scientist, is that what you do are you a scientist? It's a stupid argument. Whenever people make those types of arguments, it's really stupid, and that means they have nothing. Because in theory, am I a scientist? Well, I do have degrees in science, but I'm not a scientist. Why? Because I want to be a bartender.
Right.
It's a conscious choice, but it doesn't mean I wasn't trained in scientific fields. So with that said, CO2 is not pollution. It is not why the temperatures rise. If anybody knows anything about science, it's basically the sun. The sun is what dictates how hot it gets on this planet. It's just, but that's basic science. And that's what I'm saying. We have to break things down to its basics. Understand the basics. It's the sun. It's how the earth travels around the sun. So when the earth is spinning, guess what? When it spins, the way the sun hits it and how it's whatever part of the earth is facing the sun is going to dictate how hot it gets. So,
Right.
you know, and to believe anything different is so silly. But then if you want to get really technical, then we can say, yeah, well, you know, gravity and electromagnetism plays a part in it, and of course radiation and how it dictates this and dictates that, blah 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 blah. But CO2 is such a small part of our atmosphere that it's crazy. It's crazy to believe, like, we need more CO2. There's not enough. There's 30%. Because here's the thing, and this may or may not be controversial, but this is why I believe God wanted us to multiply, right? Because in the Bible it says you got to go multiply, right? So
be fruitful and multiply. And I mean,
but there's a reason for it. I'm not kidding you.
So what's the reason?
The scientific reason for us to multiply is to create more CO2. That's our purpose. Our purpose is to create CO2 because why? If 30, and it's a little less than 30%, but just for argument's sake, I'm going to round numbers. 30% of our air, our atmosphere, the air that we breathe, is oxygen. Very little, like 0.04%, is CO2. So here's the problem. If there is no CO2 in the air, how in the hell are our plants, our trees, going to live?
Right.
We need to create more CO2 so there is more food for the vegetation out there. All plant life needs CO2. There's not enough. That is why, well, on top of deforestation and everything else, we need more CO2 in the air. CO2 is not pollution. That is what trees need.
Right.
We used to have tons of trees, but now what happened to them? They're dying off. And is that man-made? Yeah, probably, because we cut them down and we're so stupid. We think we know how to really, you know, diagnose if a tree is sick or not. Oh, this tree has a cold. It lives for 200 years or 500 years, but let's chop it down so the other trees don't get a cold. Are you kidding me? Can you imagine if we killed ourselves for having a flu or the cold? Oh, you got a cold. Let's kill Zach. You know, he has a cold at 10 and he's going to give all the other kids a cold. So, but either way, we have to be fruitful and multiply. Why? Because we expel CO2. We create CO2. Our fertilizers, like if you really want to grow good, like apples, a lot of people, they use chicken manure for their trees to fertilize the tree. Our waste, our livestock's waste, helps grow trees, fruit trees, you know, vegetables, all like redwood trees, you know, like redwood's really good to build houses with. But that's my point. They need CO2. There's very little CO2 in the air. How is that helpful to our trees? How? It's, oh, well, and water. Well, yeah, but guess what? You know, it's hard to get water in the mountains. Well, I know snow and blah, 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 blah.
You want to know the funny thing was Rick Santorum, right? I mean, I think he would talk about like the dangers of carbon dioxide. There have been politicians that would say things like this. And it's true. The funny thing is, all people need to understand here is that it's true that plants photosynthesize, right? And they take in carbon dioxide the same way we take in oxygen.
Yep.
And ideally, when heat energy gets released from the Earth's surface, you know, some of that radiation is trapped by CO2, and that's kind of what gives it the whole temperature aspect. But it's not that's not the only thing, you know. And ideally, I just think that I think that the funny thing is climate scientists, the ones that actually believe in what they work, right? They say that there are any positives are actually, you know what I mean? Like any kind of positive that comes from this aspect of it isn't detrimental. It's not something that really has a big impact overall. And man is not solely to blame when it comes to these things. Now, if you want to talk about pollution and all that other type of stuff, with Scott Pressler going and cleaning up cities and everything. That's a different story. The funny thing is, it's a little bit ironic when people go and protest, and then as a result, they actually leave a bigger mess than when they came and showed up. That's the only real problem I have when it comes to aspects regarding climate science, right? It's really complicated, and I don't claim to know everything, but I don't know. That's just where I'm at, man. I don't know what you're...
Well, check this out. I'm not kidding you, because I'm going to make it real simple. Well, I don't drink. I've never drank, but because I know the bar industry, just trust me on this. What's better? The beer that's pushed through with CO2 gas or the beer that's pushed with nitrogen gas? And the thing is like this, they're both equally good. I honestly don't know, but the thing is, we use both of them. So it's just silly to believe that CO2 is killing the planet when people use it to drink their beer. But it's true. Like, if you know anything about kegs and stuff like that, you need that gas, and that gas goes hand in hand with that beer. It mixes with the beer. That's what gives it that little foamy top. Like when you do the but the point is, it's just ridiculous. It just is. And I'm telling you now, I believe there's not enough CO2 in the air. It's not enough, not to support all those trees and vegetation and everything else that we need CO2 for. Because I know a lot of people, nitrogen might be better, but CO2 is also good. Like whenever, like a fountain soda, they use CO2.
Mm-hmm.
They just do. Oh, check the canisters. CO2 levels are low. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, obviously we can choke on it because that's what we expel. You don't want, a high levels of CO2 because we need oxygen. But trees need CO2. Think about it. How big is a redwood tree? All those redwoods in California, how big are those trees? They need CO2 the same way we need oxygen. They need way more oxygen and way more CO2. They just do. It's needed in its blood to do all that photosynthesis. Right. I know trees don't have blood, but whatever you call tree sap or whatever, but the tree's blood needs it the same way we need blood. And there's far less, well, I honestly don't know how many trees are on the planet, but there's like, let's say a little less than 8 billion people on this planet. And if our air is 30% oxygen, come on. I mean, the trees they need more CO2. Mm-hmm. They just do, to be healthy. And that's why a lot of our vegetation is crappy. Look at the tomatoes. The store-bought tomatoes suck, and why? Well, because they probably don't have enough CO2. They probably don't have enough, as they say, methane related, because that's like the whole big thing in Australia. Oh, cow farts are killing the planet, and therefore we gotta limit farming in Australia because of too much. There's a hole in the ozone because these cows are farting. But that's a real thing down in New Zealand, Australia. That's like legit, and that's what I'm thinking. Oh man, but at least they're not hypocritical, because in theory that is, you drive down like the 5 in California past the Harris Ranch.
Yeah. And
you can feel the heat from all them cow farts. You can feel the heat, but it doesn't mean it's dangerous. It's not going to kill you. It's not like Saudi Arabia where it's like 120. Like when you drive down through the 5, through the Harris Ranch, it's more humid, but it's not hotter. And so, it's just like that type of science people are bastardizing. And I'll say it again. When you understand the science of the Bible, you'll understand why CO2 is important. And because why? Why did God create Adam and Eve? Seriously, it's in the Bible. It's in Genesis. It literally says why we needed them. He created Adam and Eve so somebody can till the ground. That meant farming.
Sure.
That meant getting that manure, getting all that methane, getting all of that waste of ours, our CO2, to help with the plant life. Seriously, that's exactly why. It's amazing because, being an atheist for so gosh darn long, like in theory, I would have believed, like, I never believed CO2 was bad, but I did think that methane might have been bad for us. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's so harmful because of the heat and the humidity. Humidity is bad. No, actually, we need humidity too. There is, it's uncomfortable. It makes me itchy because I hate hot weather. My skin is sensitive, and but that's why we got lotion. There's aloe vera plants. Seriously, like there's literally like aloe vera grows in humid areas, and there's an answer for all of that, and it's all biblical. That's why it's insane. So for someone like me who used to believe humidity was bad for humans, it's not. All you got to do is just know about aloe vera plants, cut that little leaf and put it on your skin, rub it, and you're fine. And it actually helps with bruising and all kinds of other stuff. But that's neither here nor there. No, because I feel like I'm going on these crazy rants, but it's really biblical. So humidity, as much as to my chagrin, I guess, because that's, part of being an atheist is you got to believe you're God. And I used to believe I knew it all. And, but that's, oh God, like when you really think about how stupid I used to be, it's insane. But that said, all of that stuff that's on our planet that, obviously God made for a reason, we just never understood it. So for all of those people who say like, oh, methane is bad, farming is bad, we have too much, cows and cattle. No, it's the exact opposite. It has to be that way so plants can grow to help us live longer, healthier lives. And all of these environmentalists, they're part of the death culture who wants to kill us. Think about it. If we control our CO2, if we control all of these things, right? If we control all of these things, what happens to our medicine? Right. The way they want to do it. These medicines are no longer going to produce anti-carcinogenics, antivirals, antibiotics. They're not. So we're going to get sicker and sicker and sicker, and pretty much like in Japan. Yeah. No, but you hate to say things like this because I hate to target like a certain ethnic group. But look at Japan. Japan is, I don't want to say it's a godless country because I don't know much about Japan, but I'm pretty sure there's not that many practicing Christians in Japan. And Japan is probably a good example of like progressive ideology and just godlessness, for lack of a better word, because I'm new to this. I don't know like the proper Christian way to say things. But that said, I will say Japan, in my opinion, is godless. Look at Japan. Just look at it. Those dudes are like masturbating nonstop to cartoon images of what they think women should be like.
They're herbivore men. That's a real thing out there, actually.
Yeah, no, but think about that.
They have a birth rate crisis on their hands. I know we're segueing here a little bit.
No, it's not a segue. This is a deliberate action of environmental policies. Think about it. Yeah. The only good thing about Japan is that they have nuclear energy. That is it.
Well, they're pretty awesome. Japan's a pretty cool country.
But hold on. How does Japan handle their farming and agriculture? They have all of these policies that make, it's kind of like here in the States. That's why the automakers are like, yeah, we're going to cut CO2 emission, because of their environmental policies. It led them to this AI, totally CO2-free lifestyle. And this CO2-free lifestyle, like, because in Japan they got oxygen bars and cuddling spas and all these crazy things. But here's the thing: if they would have stuck to farming, like the old-fashioned way, like with regular chicken manure or oxen manure or yak manure, things like that, traditional farming, I guarantee you they would be working hard, working the fields, and not so focused so much on AI, playing with all of that virtual reality goggles and things like that. living in this fake world.
Mm-hmm.
They don't interact with one another. They live 100% digitally, and they're 100% dependent on their government for everything.
Right.
Healthcare, everything. Why? Because of their environmental, policies that destroyed their agriculture. Seriously, how many fishing farms are left in Japan? Or is it all corporate farming? And corporate farming is, that they're all, what's that word? Carbon, they do this cap and trade. So you know what I mean? So they adapted.
Can you explain that for our listeners if they're not quite aware of that?
Well, cap and trade. Okay, cap and trade is a scam that where a big company that quote unquote pollutes,
Mm-hmm.
they can buy the credits of a local farmer who doesn't pollute. And they give the local farmer tons of cash.
Yeah, we talked about this carbon credit. Yeah.
Yeah, to get their carbon credit.
It's almost like thinning out the footprint here to make it.
Yeah, so these dudes are totally allowed to pollute and do things the wrong way. Like, I hate to say things like this because I'm actually for it. But the problem with fishing genetically and mass producing fish through science, like in a test tube salmon, is that it really does hurt the environment. It really does. But it does feed areas that need to be fed. Like, you're not going to see salmon in Nigeria. You know what I mean? Or Kenya or all of these, Somalia, like all of these countries that are totally starving because of warlords and crazy Muslims. But it's not just because, like, tomorrow we'll get into this. I really want to get into the Muslim thing because that's what I watched that Black Summit thing, and I'm telling you, it's crazy. All that Killer Mike is actually a Muslim. So anyway, that's a tangent, but we got to address this because Muslims are like Christians, but the difference is this: Muslims, and we've talked about this before because this is a revelation I got, from accepting Jesus. No, remember I told you I had all these revelations and stuff like that. So one of the revelations I got was that Christianity literally is based on love. And then I researched it, and a lot of people, it really is. It's based on love. But then the thing with being a Muslim, you have to submit to that. You have to submit to be a Muslim.
Yeah,
it's literally their thing.
I've said this before, where it's one of those few ideologies and religions where you're born into it. It's forced on you by the sword, literally. And if you don't, it's death.
Well, no, but even but like in Africa, they're not born into it. They convert Christians into being a Muslim. And I'm telling you, it's crazy. That's the problem with Africa. The Muslims are taking over Africa. And because everybody knows this, Lebanon used to be paradise. It used they used to call it the Paris of
it used to be also a Christian country, Lebanon.
Not anymore. They killed them. And that's the thing. So if you don't submit to being a Muslim or worshiping Allah, whatever, Prophet Muhammad, they kill you. So you got a choice of either dying or living. And because death is anti, right. God doesn't want you to die, it goes against you. So of course you're going to have to submit and secretly worship behind everybody's back. But I'm telling you, this whole Muslim thing is really crazy when you really think about it. So on that note, Africa really needs a lot of help because Africa is going to be the first Muslim continent if we don't stop it, and it's going to destroy, because look at Iran. Iran is nothing. Iraq, Saudi, all of these places have nothing. Israel, on the other hand, is paradise. They got their own farms. They know all these things.
Because of the United States funding, because of...
Yeah. But that's the truth. But it's the truth. But at least you don't have to, the Jews ain't killing anybody. So, I get why people say Judeo-Christianity, but it's still not Christianity.
Yeah, no, and I've stopped saying that because it's fun.
Yeah, because it's all fake.
Even people who don't listen to this show that just watch my YouTube videos are like, come on, man, you got to stop saying Judeo-Christian. It's funny because they were just like, Well, what do Jews and Christians have in common? And it's funny when you hear a lot of fundamental type folks, it's like, well, nothing, because
Exactly.
I
was going to say that. I said they got nothing in common.
Nothing, because it's funny. If you really think about it, they may claim to, worship the same God and whatnot, right? And people are like, oh, well, the Jews got the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Bible. I'm like, yeah, but they stopped believing in Genesis 1. It's not when Jesus came. It's in Genesis 1, because if you believe Moses, then you believe Jesus.
Yeah, no, but it's the truth. And that's the crazy thing. It's like but like,
do you think that climate change aspects also are pushed more heavily by Muslims and Jews? I mean, I don't know.
Of course. No, but that's the point.
Christians are just very indifferent about it. Even the average Christian is just like, well, this is, God made the world, like we talked about how crazy the atmosphere is, right? Like that's God's force field right there for objects not only leaving the planet, but objects coming into the planet. It burns up. Fire. That's just what happens. And
but the atmosphere also makes this planet habitable for us.
Correct.
And that's why it is
like a shield. It's a literal force field. Yeah.
It literally says so in Genesis. It literally says so. That's why he did it, because I think he didn't like the 6-day people for whatever reason. He goes, I'm going to kill you guys off, and I'm going to create.
I still don't know about that, because I feel like the 6-day people, right? And he created. Here's the thing, because in the Bible, he created Adam after
on the 8th day.
Yeah, because people think man were created on the 6th day, like Adam's kind were created on the 6th day, but I don't know about that. I feel like from listening to you talk about it, because after he rested, he said, well, then he made a man, he put him in the Garden of Eden, right? And that's us. That's
where we come from. So we're not 6th day, we're not Neanderthal, we're not,
because the flood also took out all those old humans.
Crap, you froze. You're still frozen.
Unfreeze
yourself.
Yeah, the internet's bad. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now? I said the flood took out all those humans.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, and there was a reason for. But it doesn't say so in the Bible. But something tells me God did not like those people. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but because there's a lot of gap. Because obviously this is about Moses and our people, about Jesus and stuff. No, that's what the Old Testament is. Just a big history of Jesus's forefathers and mothers. And I think that's what, but there was a whole lot missing between the 6th and 8th day. And of course, with the flood and everything else. And I'm telling you, there's a lot that we don't know. And, I don't even know if I'd even ask God these questions if I ever get a chance to talk to him. But on that note,
I like that you're coming around, though, because you're like, nah, Jesus is right.
No, but that's the thing. Like, the Old Testament is the history of Jesus's family.
Yes.
That's what it is. And people don't see that. I'm thinking, how do you guys not see this? Mm-hmm. And that's why it's like the Jews have nothing really in common with Christians, other than that they understand the lineage of Jesus Christ, and I'm thinking, right. But yeah, I think there's Jews and Muslims have more in common than Christians and anybody else. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Going back to the environmental issues, the reason why progressives push this environmental craze and they get Muslims behind it is because they are natural allies. Because Muslims embrace that death culture. I'll give credit to Jewish people. The majority of Jewish people stopped stoning people for disagreeing with them. Only in certain parts of Israel are you going to see Jewish people do that against like gay people or something like that. But it still happens. But Muslims, they are not afraid to pick up a rock and have mob mentality and just kill a person for disagreeing with them.
Right.
And that's why the progressives, who are all atheists, pretty much recruit their quote-unquote sergeant at arms. because Muslim, oh yeah, the world's gonna blow up and all this other stuff. If you honestly believe the world is gonna end in 12 years or something with some environmental,
They said that 12 years ago.
yeah, they say that every 12 years, but that goes against the Bible. It goes against science. And I keep trying to tell everybody the Bible is the book of science. We don't have the understanding of it. We don't. We could barely comprehend the numbers. What's that? The guy, the black dude that I really don't care too much for. Neil deGrasse Tyson, right?
Yeah.
Is that his name?
Yes.
Okay, so that dude, that guy, even he'll admit that math is the language of the universe. That is, God invented math.
Right.
And that's the thing. Where in math, what mathematical formula is going to back anything that says anything remotely that the environment's going to be destroyed in a few years? The destruction of the earth, if it ever happens, which I think it won't, because I don't think it says so in the Bible, it's not going to happen the way it's. I mean, I have not read Revelations, but from what you told me, I honestly believe that's how it's going to happen. I think something like that is more realistic than some kind of environmental catastrophe. Oh, all of these hurricanes. Yeah, the hurricanes that end drought for many regions of the planet. Yeah, that brings rainfall, all kinds of stuff. Hurricanes are actually a good thing.
Sure.
They just are. It's good for this planet that hurricanes happen. Just like volcanic eruptions are good for the soil.
Right.
It just is. So, yeah, I honestly, like, this is just me personally believing that all of these anti-environmental people, they're just embracing more death culture. That is what they do. That's what they do. That's just part of it. And everybody's so afraid of death, or not understanding. I don't want to say they don't understand the Bible, but but when I really think about it, they don't understand it. Like, for any Christian who believes all of this environmental crap that the left pushes,
Yep.
and there's a lot of them, because like Pete Buttigieg, right? He's supposedly a Christian guy, and he's gay as hell, and all this other stuff. But you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think that's Christianity, and that's my point. So there's a ton of Christians like that, and and if I'm if I was a betting man, I would say 80% of Christians in the United States, about 95% of Christians in the world, think like that guy Buttigieg.
Mm-hmm.
It's the truth. Because here's the thing. If you're gay and you're a Christian, you would do your best not to be gay. Like, stop taking it up the rear or doing sodomy of any type. And you openly admit and say, hey, look, I struggle with this. This is da-da-da-da-da. That's what Christians do. Christians have to always be working on themselves. And crap. Oh, here we go. Because I got my old Bible here.
Yeah.
It's the diagnostic criteria called the DSM-3R revised.
Yeah. Wait,
And,
can I see it? Can you pull it up? What is this thing? Oh, okay.
This is my old. Seriously, as an atheist, I used to believe in the American Psychiatric Association, and oh man, just so this is how. But believe it or not, this book, all the principles, all of the mental illnesses are all addressed in the Bible.
Right.
Way back in the beginning of Genesis, Exodus, all of these things. It's just a remake of it, but then they take God out of it to make you feel like you're God yourself because you're smarter than everybody else. But anyway, so the thing is, in this book, it literally talks about being gay and all this other stuff, how being gay is a mental illness. Mm-hmm. It really does. And not that being gay is a mental illness, it's the acts behind being gay. So, like, you can't play in feces and things like that. And that's what you do when you're gay. I hate to break it to people, but that's what you do. You play in your own feces, and that's not smart. It's medically unsafe because of bacteria, viruses, blah, blah, blah. So the thing is, if you are a Christian and you are gay, you don't celebrate the behavior that you do. It's kind of like what you're doing right now. You don't celebrate your addiction to porn. You don't. You don't celebrate it. You struggle with it, and you realize it.
Because that's what they in the Bible is referred to as repentance. We know that we're screwed in the head. Even the most righteous people there's no one righteous before God. So it's not something to be celebrated. And even I heard a guy say this, like, the thing is, like, it was like a pastor of a church was talking about gay people. It's like, I would welcome gay people into my church, but the thing is, don't promote fornication and sodomy and stuff, and don't act on it. It's just
exactly.
Try to, it's just because they come in and they're like, well, you should accept me for who I am, but I'm gonna blaspheme and do whatever I feel like doing. It's like, no, because that's the problem with the LGBT community. And don't get me wrong, I got gay friends, but some of them are very like, you cater to my demands, and I should be able to walk in the church and hold this guy's hand and like, do all that weird stuff. And you gotta, it's like, no, get the hell out.
Well, see, but I'm not kidding you. Like in some cultures, it's acceptable for people to hold hands. That's fine. But once you start kissing and doing
that's
all
what
that,
I mean. Holding hands, like if you're a father, you're gonna hold your daughter's hand. You're gonna hold, that's fine.
Or your son.
Yeah, I get it. You can kiss your son. That's fine. But the thing is, what? Everybody, see, the funny thing is with people is they don't need to be taught these boundaries. People already know. The funny thing is when people try to spell it out, when they try to define boundaries, they do that because they're trying to find loopholes, not because they actually everybody knows, like, hey, that's crossing the line. Like people, a 6-year-old kid and a 60-year-old man, for some reason, we implicitly know those things, unless we're messed up in the head because it's been taught. But implicitly, you just know, like, probably not a good idea, right? But when people say, well, what do you mean by, my dress can't be so short? What do you mean by I can't do this? They're saying that. What?
You froze again. You gotta rewind. Yeah.
Man, I mean, I got to get better internet connection. I don't know why it's been like this the last few months.
Man, because you're on a good roll, and then it just.
So, what did you hear? What did you hear? Because I think it'll be recorded on my end. But what did you hear?
Oh shoot! Okay, so basically, you were just you froze up after the part about celebrating being gay.
Oh yeah. Okay, so. Like the thing is, when people ask about loopholes as to what they can get away with and what they can't, they're looking for excuses to be able to indulge in that behavior. But what I was saying was a 6-year-old and a 60-year-old man, they implicitly know what's crossing the line. But when people say, well, what do you mean I can't? Does that mean I can't like kiss them on the cheek? They're looking for ways to get away with it is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're looking for ways to do it. And that's why every time I hear that from people, when somebody makes a standard of like, hey, you know what? If you're living in fornication or living with sin, probably don't kiss your girlfriend in church. And then, the person who wants to find a loophole, an excuse to get away, exception to the rule, they're going to ask things like, well, what do you mean by kissing? You mean I can't give her a friendly kiss on the cheek? It's like, look, we're not saying that. You know what the line is. You're just trying to find a way to get out of it. And that's the only reason people ask those questions. When somebody from the LGBT community comes in and they say, hey, I mean, can I, wear tight pants or, you know what I mean? It's just like, well, think about this, right? If you're asking these questions, it's because you're looking for a way to be able to exercise that and without considering anybody else's feelings, right? When in reality, what you should be doing is going, well, what's everybody else wearing? If everybody else is not okay with doing it and they're doing this, then maybe I shouldn't be okay with doing it. That's the mindset you got to have. You can't go into it thinking like, well, what can I get away with? What can I get away with these fools? It's like, come on. Like, you're just looking for excuses.
No, but it's true. Like,
so true, right?
No, but it's the same thing with women being modest. Like, oh, what's like the dress codes at school? No low cut blouses, no high skirts. And then a lot of women were protesting that, saying, well, it's not our fault. You should teach the boys to not be pigs or stare at our chest. I was thinking,
men are visual creatures. It's just how we are.
But the thing is, the fallacy with that is, it's like, come on, because you cannot control how every person is going to react. Because 1 out of every 100 dudes are going to be insane and stalk you. You know what I mean? It's like, come on. You cannot control what a stalker does, or some kind of serial rapist or anything. And that's who they look for. So just for your own safety, it's not about other people. It's for your own safety. And that's where I think a lot of Christians make mistake, is they make it about things that are not important. Women should be modest, not, because other men are weak, but it's just for their own safety, because we cannot control what every single human does. We can't. And so for your own safety, you should do that. Just like with holding hands. When do men hold hands? In combat. Why? Because you never know, like, because you know what I mean? Like, you got to be in close contact with your partner to make sure, one, you don't shoot them on accident, and two, that you guys are always staying together. You know what I mean? So you're not really holding hands, but like, you got to feel their back, or always in contact with them, so we are still together, we're not lost. But once you lose contact with them, man, you're like, oh my God, I'm all alone now. You know what I mean? And then you might shoot them an act. I don't know. But anyway, this whole, going back to, like, trying to bring this back to the environmental movement, but that's the point. So many Christians fall into.
Say we should revisit climate change, because this is all part of it.
Yeah, because so many Christians fall into this, and they're like, oh, well, we want to be good stewards of the earth. Yeah, but these environmental policies are anti-biblical. They just are. So it's either you believe in the Bible or you don't. It's either you believe in the science of the Bible or you don't. Not that it's Scientology, because it's not like Scientology, but there is a real mathematical based science in the Bible. It's just reality. There's no way around it. And until we understand math better, then we can understand the other sciences that derive from this, like botany. Do we really understand botany? Well, not good enough if we're chopping down trees for having a cold. Not if we're trying to say, oh, get rid of CO2, because that literally is plant food.
Right.
So, how are we, and I'm telling you, this country used to be more Christian-like, but the more we go on, the less and less Christian this country becomes. And, everybody I know is pretty much an atheist in the science community or in the math community, because, the older they get, they because I know a lot of older people who honestly believe in God, but the younger kids, not one of them. They're all atheists. They're all growing up to be a certain way. And not that they believe in, climate change the way the left does, but they don't care enough to go on TV or maybe do a podcast. I don't know. You know what I mean? They just don't care.
Right.
Because it doesn't affect them. Why? Because they are their own gods. And that's a real problem with atheists. They're God. They can control their own everything around them. They don't believe in anything but themselves, and they don't care about anyone but themselves. And that's probably the worst type of self-love you could ever have. But yeah, all of these environmental wackies, it's crazy, but it's just another attack on Christian. But that's how they attack Christianity. They don't, because like when you hear, what's that guy from Texas, the Ted Cruz or anybody saying, oh, they're attacking Christianity, they don't understand how they are attacking Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
They attack Christianity through environmental policies. Why? Because environmental policies also lead to, because now we only got a couple of minutes left, but man, I wish we should have, man, because this takes a long time to
arrive at the point. Yeah.
Well, no, but there's a lot of ways to attack Christianity through environmental policies.
Mm-hmm.
So we already talked about the the trees and everything else, but another attack on Christianity is depopulation. So we touched about it a little bit about Japan. Japan has a decrease. So according to their environmental policies, A big problem is, guess what? We create CO2. So therefore, we need less humans, more abortions. We got to kill babies. We got to stop people from making babies. That's anti-Christian. That is a direct attack on Christianity.
And it's also not environmentally sound. It's funny how these vegans all talk about protecting the animals. This is all part of the green agenda, and they'll kill their own.
Yeah, that's insane. And the more because think about it, the more humans there are, there's going to be way more cows and way more chicken or pigs. You know what I mean? Because we love pigs, we love chicken, and we love beef. You know, we like duck. So we're going to make sure that those animals live. And so either way, and so the thing is like this. People have to understand what an attack on Christianity looks like. It comes from progressive ideology. It comes from environmental policies that the end result, okay, so how do we stop global warming? We got to kill ourselves. Get rid of half the population. If we kill half the population, guess what? Our environmental policies are going to be better. And that's a reality. So you know what I mean? So, and because of that, Christians don't even recognize it. And that's why, you know, a lot of people might not agree with what I'm saying, but it's the truth. A lot of Christians do not love themselves. Yeah. That's why they get fooled with these environmental policies. That's why they get fooled into believing abortion is not killing babies. Right. There is no debate. There is literally no debate. It's killing a human being. And we've talked about this before. You could be a human being in a wheelchair with no IQ, half a brain, but you're still human. You could be a zygote and you're still human, just a different type of human.
Right.
I don't know if you can hear me because you're okay. There you go. You're moving again.
No, I was.
You're froze for a bit, but anyway. So, but you know what I mean. A lot of Christians cannot recognize attacks on Christianity, whether it's through killing babies, whether it's through environmental policy, whether it's about believing that there is a civil rights for the LGBTQ community. See, that's an attack on Christianity.
Yeah.
Because that is not a civil right. You know, so civil rights are rights given by God. That's a civil right. Not rights given to the government. Healthcare, that is given by the government.
Right.
Education, given by the government. All that stuff. That is not a civil right. But just like driving, it's not a civil right. But when Christians confuse that, they confuse it because they don't honestly love themselves. There's something in their lives that's empty. And they have to address that. And that's why it's the first commandment. Because it's hard to love yourself when you're always, I don't want to say repenting because I don't really know what that means.
Working on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on it. But you know what I'm saying? But whenever you feel guilty and crap about what the things you've done, it's hard to love yourself.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with that, you kind of hear some idiot talking in the background about, oh, it's hurting, you know, the elephant somewhere. And then you're thinking, oh, wow, I didn't know that. So me cutting down coconut trees is somehow, or me making plastic is, you know, using plastic straws is hurting elephants in Africa. I'm not paying attention because I'm working on myself. So I'm going to hear something like, yeah, I agree with that, and just support it for no reason.
Right.
And that's what a lot of Christian people do. And that's, I still think the biggest problem for Christians right now is that first commandment. And that's why we fall for stupidity. In the old days, like when Jesus, I know it's time to go, but you know what I mean? But there's so much to talk about with these environmental policies and how it attacks not just us as humans, but just everything God says.
Mm-hmm.
It really does go against it. Even science, it's easy to argue the science, but it's hard to argue the aspect against Christianity.
Right.
Because this is really brand new, like, not just because I'm brand new at Christianity, but it's mind-blowing
Yeah.
how evil these progressives are. Think about this. All of these policies goes against us living a good life and turning earth into actual heaven for us, where we
Right.
can live healthy, long lives for hundreds of years, enjoying our grandkids, and think about this. We could have great grandkids live up to be 200-300 years old if we just accept God and the Bible, how it says. We could do this because the plant life will help us sustain it with the anti-carcinogens, the antiviral, anti-inflammatory. All of these are actually found naturally in plants through
Right.
our waste, through our accidents. It's just a reality. Think about this. Scripps, UC San Diego Scripps program, they knew this ever since the 90s.
Yeah.
And so this is not me saying something just to be crazy or controversial. This is actual facts. How do these people not know this? But because they're not Christian, that's why they don't know this. I didn't know it until I became a Christian. But it's the truth. You don't know this until you accept the truth. And once you accept the truth, all of the mysteries are no longer a mystery. The mystery is why. Like, why this, why that, why, like, there's so many questions I really want to talk to God, like, just ask him, why this, why that, you know what I mean? And because I get, like, I kind of think the reason why he doesn't control the carnal mind is because that's for us to have, it's for us, like, it's for us to control everything, because God isn't controlled by anybody. So he gave us that freedom to have our own freedom.
Well, that's what I mean. When it comes down to it, as a final thought here, when he says we're made in his image, I mean, come on, it's not just
no, but that's where I got it from. We were made in his image. That's why he did it.
Yeah.
That's literally because he wants us to learn and grow as a people and be good to one another, and you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like all the good stuff that we can have. Yeah, man, that's solid. Anyway, I'm going to shut up because I know it's already 1 o'clock.
No, of course. But
we're
going to talk more about this in further episodes. Let's talk more about the Black Summit thing, more climate change related stuff later this week. So, yeah, guys, I hope you stay tuned in. I know we have a tendency to ramble, but I'll cut it right there. And, yeah, we'll talk to all of you guys soon. Take care.